Kia ora everybody and welcome to Insider's Guide. Today we're discussing the resort with one of the most apt names I've ever heard of, the Remarkables. While it may not be the most famous place on the planet, there's a lot to love about the Remarkables, which we'll delve all into in this video. Because the Remarkables appeals to two starkly different demographics, this episode is split into two parts. This part discusses all of the crowd flow, on-piste, and background info. If you're looking for information about the freeride, off-piste, or shoots experiences, you'll want part B. So with that, let's begin an Insider's Guide to Ski Resorts, the Remarkables. Now, the Remarkables, called just Remarks for short, has some solid strengths but also some glaring weaknesses. The Remarkables has solid on-piste groomed options. It also has good shoots and demanding expert terrain. However, it is severely lacking in decent intermediate level off-piste, at least in comparison to most other fields in the area. But of course, I'll tell you all I know about all the levels of terrain across the two parts of this episode. The Remarkables is a quite popular ski field by New Zealand standards, but with recent improvements in lifts, on-mountain crowds isn't typically an issue. Of course, for those times that it does become an issue, I'll tell you all the secrets I know to avoid those queues as well. Contrary to most other fields, the Remarkables' slopes face primarily north and west. The reason most fields face east and south is because those aspects get less direct sunlight, so snow retention and quality is significantly better. As such, despite their incredible grooming team, the slopes at Remarks often deteriorate more quickly than at other fields, so be sure to pay attention to the forecasted weather both for the day you go up, but also for the days leading up to your visit. The Remarkables has an issue with its road, and that is that in peak winter, while driving up in the morning, the sun will often be directly into your eyes if you're driving, which can make for a very difficult drive. I would highly recommend taking the bus if possible, because the upper car parks can fill up early on busy days, and so you don't have to deal with that road. All of the NZ ski resorts, which include Remarks, Coronet, and Mount Hutt, have carpool priority days in which vehicles with a certain number of occupants, typically 3 or more, will be allowed to park in the top car parks, but those who don't have enough people will be forced to park down below in car park 4, a decent shuttle ride away. They announce those a day or two before they enforce them on their website and social media channels, so be sure to check the night before you intend to go. It typically happens on powder days and weekends. Now, knowing our primarily American audience, if you have an Icon Pass, you'll need to exchange it for a My Pass. I would recommend doing it in Queenstown to save yourself time at the resort. Getting rentals in town is another good way to save yourself from the queues at the mountain. Do beware that any unattended items in the lodge will be removed by the staff, so for the most part, no saving seats. There is a fence outside where you can hang backpacks and such if you need to, so you don't need to rent a locker or anything. Alright, now let's get to the good stuff. The base area of the Remarkables is a bit funky and quite chaotic. Front and center is the learner zone, with Alta up above it, inaccessible from the lodge. Both the curvy and sugar bowl queues are located in this space between their bottom terminals. The shadow queue is way up over here. To get to any of these queues from the lodge, you'll have to walk across or up a bit of a ways. It is easy enough to get to shadow from the curvy and sugar bowl pods, as you just keep your eye out for this traverse on the skiers left of Alta Green. However, coming from Calypso and the main shadow area, you'll be forced back to the shadow queue because they don't want experts cutting across the learning area, so you'll need to walk across the base and Madness to get to Curvy and Sugar Bowl. You may see some people cutting from this switchback on Calypso over to Alta Blue to get over to Curvy and Sugar Bowl, but I would be careful doing that as there are some hidden rocks and tussocks just beyond sight level. There is also a massive fence with only one tiny gate as you come down Calypso into the queue, so be very careful in that area because it gets quite chaotic. As far as these three main lifts go, Shadow tends to have the shortest queue and Sugar Bowl has the longest by far. As such, I recommend getting Sugar Bowl laps from opening till 10:30 and then again from 2:30 till closing. Between those hours, I would say to lap Curvy and Shadow if you desire to avoid the lines. The Shadow Basin and Sugar Bowl bars lock once closed, then they automatically open but not until the last minute. It's a bit different than your average chairlift, so don't panic. Now, for true beginners, that being first-timers and learners, you'll start on the Tahi and Rua conveyors, after which you'll progress to the Alta Quad. Off the top of the Alta Quad, you can take either the Alta Green or Turquoise. Alta Green has all of the traffic from Curvy Main funneling onto it, which makes it much busier than Turquoise. As such, I highly recommend Turquoise for learners over Alta Green. Alta Green has one flat spot just before the Turquoise merge, so be aware of that. Alta Green Extreme is a narrow little natural gully that can feel quite crowded as well and is not a great option for learners. This blue going right through the middle of that entire area is the upper section of that gully and is typically left ungroomed. Off the top of Curvy Basin, you have two options. Both Doubleback and Centurion are classic blue cruisers, but Doubleback feels less icy and busy to me, so I prefer that side. Both then flow into Curvy Main, the only groomer in the area, which makes it extremely crowded and dangerous. However, seeing as there are no alternatives for the most part, it is what it is. Dropout is a little low-level off-piste area that can see some exposed rocky spines and tussock in low snow conditions. In the worst of conditions, it can resemble a chute more closely than a blue. It also requires a bit of an uphill traverse at the bottom, and as such, skis more like a red in general, in my opinion, but is also a very variable area. All the same can be said for this little off-piste blue section of Centurion. Although, sometimes, on the rare occasion, this little blue section is groomed, accessible skiers right of the ice bar. When groomed, it is a good alternative to Centurion Main, and is helpful for avoiding the Curvy Main traffic. Coliseum is relatively rock-lined, but if you stay in the middle of the tracked area, it actually is typically a very pleasant experience and is one of the easiest blacks at Remarks. The entrance can be a bit rocky, and it is a slight bit uphill to exit. Why not is access through a gate on the skier's left side of Doubleback that requires sidestepping up to access. Once through, it's a traverse across that offers access to a wide open area with lots of little rocky spines and wide natural gullies. The gullies fill in nicely, but the traverses in and out can be a bit tricky. Otherwise, it's a nice, often overlooked area to track some powder. This little symbol over on the other side of Curvy is the ice bar. It is incredibly popular, so I would highly recommend avoiding Curvy Main around 3 when it closes, unless you want to lose the rest of your ski season to a drunk, out-of-control snowboarder. Now, Sugar Bowl is popular for a reason. As you just saw, Curvy Basin really only has one groomed route down. Sugar Bowl has several. Castaway is the marquee Big Mountain Green, being a traditional green groomer on its upper part and going around on this lower section as a road. Its beginning portion can sometimes be one with a terrain park, which is weird and poorly designed, but they're typically somewhat roped off on both the left and right, so shoot the gap. That section also carries traffic for crossfall and all the lower smaller runs, so be cautious because it gets quite congested. Gotham City is a short but steep groomer that shortcuts that road portion. If you're a beginner, be sure to stick way far to your left to avoid accidentally getting stuck on it, as that's not a place you want to be. The road portion of Castaway is quite narrow, so use caution there as well. G West is the off-piste between Castaway and Gotham City, and is a good learning area. Lower Water Race is mostly off-piste as well, although it has a narrow groom strip on the skier's right side next to the snow fences. That groom strip, however, is a sheet of pure ice about 95% of the time. Hookah is very rarely groomed, and, just like the two previously mentioned zones, is a mellow, wide, level area to learn or practice skiing off-piste. Crossfall is one of the other major groomers, and it is a significant step up from Castaway as it has some fairly steep sections. The initial pitch is one of the steepest, but can be avoided by sticking to Castaway for another 50 meters and then hitting a groomed road on the skier's right. The last part, after Serpentine has merged on, gets congested. That, in conjunction with one particularly steep and icy pitch going back into the base area, can make for a difficult time at the end of either of these runs. When they can, they make snow overnight in that area to try and make it a little bit easier, but artificial snow can only do so much. There is a groomed road accessible skiers left just before that final pitch that takes you around and down to Alta Green if you want to avoid that area. However, you can't access that from Serpentine as it is a bit uphill of the merge. At the bottom of that road, Hookah, Lower Water Race, and Gotham City, you will need a bit of speed to make up a flat section back to Alta Green. Fall Line and Lower Gallery are also off-piste learning areas, albeit with a few more obstacles and not as consistent of pitch. To get to Gallery, you'll have to do a bit of an uphill traverse, so get some speed going into it. It isn't marked, but you'll see the traverse on the skier's left of Serpentine for Gallery. Serpentine is my favorite of the main groomers in Sugar Bowl as it twists and winds its way along the boundary through some cool rock formations. Its difficulty falls between that of Crossfall, which is steeper, and Castaway, which is mellower, although Serpentine has one steeper, narrower, and icier pitch at the end. Just after that pitch, before the Castaway merge, it gets a touch flat, so get some speed on that flat section. Nakahi is a short groomer that just connects from Castaway to Serpentine. It can be a bit uphill if you exit Sugar Bowl left to get to Serpentine, so exiting right and using Nakahi instead is never a bad option. Upper Gallery is groomed and has some props and, well, let's call them natural features set up on the sides. That's what this stash depiction represents. In person, the trail sign also says the stash instead of Upper Gallery. It's honestly a nice quiet groomer because its entrance is kinda hidden, but if you keep your eyes peeled, you can certainly do it without hitting any features. There is also a baby cliff drop in the middle partway down, but it is well marked and easy to go around. Upper Water Race, over on the other side, is a narrow, sometimes groomed, sometimes ungroomed area wedged between the parks and the boundary. Not many people go there because it's hard to spot, but it's honestly nothing special. All of the parks at the Remarkables are up in Sugar Bowl in this TNT area. There is an assortment of jumps and features and even sometimes a small half-pipe. However, I still found Cardrona's parks better, so if you're a diehard park skier, I would go there instead. But as far as the parks at the NZ ski mountains, Remarks Parks is definitely the best. Jumping over to the right side here, Shadow Basin, just like Curvy, has only one groomed route down. That is Calypso. It starts as a road, then splits. The skier's right fork, called Sunrise on the paper trail map, is much steeper and icier, but the skier's left fork, Calypso, tends to get more traffic. After coming together again, it once again forks. The skier's left fork is mid-steeps, and although it starts off with just a bit of an uphill road, it quickly turns into a nice blue groomer. This middle portion of Calypso, alternative to mid-steeps, isn't groomed nightly and gets a bit narrow in spots. It continues into a portion of road, or you can take a quick off-piste dip in this area marked as black in order to shortcut the road. After those two runs come back together, it turns into a narrow road that is really difficult to overtake on. So with all that said, in short, the groomers in Shadow border on red for me. Well, that about wraps it up for Part A. Now go check out Part B about the Remarkables freeride experience, or check out one of our other Insider's guides, all about other resorts in New Zealand, North America, and Europe. As always, please put any questions down below. Thank you all so much for watching. All my love, I'm out.